You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast. We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. My name is Billy Dees, Cynthia Elliott on the line. We always wait just a moment for people to lock onto the live stream. Sometimes they have to refresh their browser and refresh their app, what have you. So we'll give it just a moment before we get into the podcast, because sometimes the podcast audience doesn't know what spaces are. But I did want to thank everybody that joined us last Monday for the space where we talked about the demise of journalism and what happened to it. It was a very well done space, and not just because we were in it, but everybody that came up, spoke very intelligently and had great points, and it was a very productive space. Right now, tentatively, we are shooting to do another one the Monday after next, which I believe is August 19th. And again, it will be at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So with that being said, I'm going to pause just a moment and we'll get right into the podcast. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily a commentary and an interview podcast. Today, we're going to do commentary. We're going to do it live, and Thursday nights, my fellow co-host, Cynthia Elliott, is with us. We are live on X and any number of other platforms. So welcome wherever you are watching. Cynthia, what is going on?
Oh, I don't know, a lot. The media is just I say the world is off the chain right now, like, there's so
Yes.
much going on.
I honestly, when we do these shows, it's hard to decide where to go first. Today we're going to center around mostly the election. A lot has happened with, let's say, the Democrats and what they are doing. They're the big story right now. I know the polling varies, and it's interesting. We talk about false realities. I'll tell you what I've noticed. No matter what camp you're in, whether it's the Democratic one, the Republican one, or the RFK one, the polls at any given time that don't favor your candidate, those are fake. And the ones that favor your candidate, those are the real ones.
It's true.
It's true. And you tell me if I'm wrong about this. I come from a red state. Okay, it's almost certain that Ohio is going to go red. You're in
New York.
civic blue.
Blue.
Yeah, and it's getting it's a little off color. It's starting to
Oh,
turn just
yeah.
a little bit.
Oh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely turning more red than it's ever
Yes,
been. It's purple right now.
it's purple. That's what I was going to say. It's purple right now. But with that being said, I'll tell you this. Obviously the polling results can vary. You have some that are skewed. You have errors in them, and a lot of other things. But I tell you, in 2020, the polling was pretty close on Trump and Biden. And out in the public, I would occasionally run into people that were going to vote for Biden, and they were all about him. They were fans of him, throughout his Senate career, and that's fine. That's entirely their purview. No problem with that at all. That's what America is all about. But I'm noticing all these incredible figures about how high Kamala is got this bounce. And I have yet to run into one person. I run into people that don't like Trump, but I have yet to run into one person who, the Trump thing aside, says, "Yes, Kamala, she's amazing." I have yet to run into one person that is pro Kamala, not just anti Trump, but pro Kamala. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right, Billy. What I'm finding is that people who hate Trump have suddenly become pro Kamala, even if they did not like her and did not have a single nice thing to say about her until about 2 weeks ago, when their hatred for almost delusional perspectives on, what Trump stands for, turned into love for Kamala, who's done nothing for basically anyone except herself for the last few years.
Yes. One thing I have noticed about Kamala is that so far, her talking points at the rallies are pure anti-Trump. I mean,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
her platform is, "Hey, Trump's bad."
yeah. Well, that's
There's
been the Democrats for the last 4 years.
Yes, and I was hoping they would change that because here again,
Yeah,
from a marketing perspective, I thought, okay, they got to come up with something that's rah rah Democrats, right? Not just oh that guy's bad. And it's the same thing about he's going to be a dictator on day one, misquoting that joke that he made. And here again, I'm not necessarily a Trump guy either, but these things that they're quoting and throwing out there have either been misquoted or fabricated completely. Most of them. There's a few that have a ring of truth to them, but the
yeah.
vast majority of the stuff is BS.
When I heard Kamala say something today, I was like, "Oh, she's speaking to the issues," and she's talking about the cost of food, and I'm like, "Well, that's her training over the last 2 weeks."
Yeah,
But where the F were you the last, 2 years when the cost of food got out of control, or maybe 3 years ago, but suddenly it's an issue, and it's like, well, it
yeah,
wasn't an issue during Bidenomics, but now that Bidenomics are absolutely crashing, suddenly food's an issue, and it's like, "Sweetie, we had major issues for 2 years. You haven't spoken to any of it. Now all of a sudden, because you're up for election, you're speaking to things that actually matter to people, and you know what? People can see it.
yeah,
Most people can see the BS."
yeah. Let's listen in on some of the things that Kamala's had to say in the recent past. Here we go.
We have to stay woke. Like everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
So you're now no longer are you necessarily keeping those private files in some file cabinet that's locked in the basement of the house. It's on your laptop, and it's then therefore up here in this cloud that exists above us, right? It's no longer in a physical place.
So,
I'm sorry, but it's so laughable that she's speaking about, like, I wish politicians would stop talking about technology because most of them have never got a clue about what they're talking about.
I will say this and I want to say in defense of, but that clip looked like it's a couple of years old. She looks younger there.
Mhm.
In the early days of cloud technology, a lot of people didn't understand what it was. Really, in most basic terms, it's just a server that you're hitting up. But that the part of their marketing was just the cloud. You don't have to have things on your computer. You can always access them. It's on the cloud. So in defense of her in that regard, she fell victim to a lot of that
Yeah.
verbiage. But nonetheless, being a very powerful person talking about technology, somebody probably should have gave her some cliff notes on it or
Yeah,
something.
my biggest issue with her, and I wanna be clear with the listeners, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, I'm an independent, and
Yeah,
I try to focus my energy on the people that I think will actually solve some of the biggest issues facing humanity. And not only has she never come across as somebody who gave too much energy towards the issues that were facing humanity, almost every time I've ever heard her speak, her grasp of the facts or the content was so shallow
yeah.
that most of what she talked about sounded like gibberish. And so my biggest issue with her is not about the fact that she's a Democrat. It's about the fact that I think she's completely ill-equipped to be president of the United States. And to add to that, she reminds me a lot of the people that I knew in my career in corporate America that got to these lofty positions while having no skill set to actually make anything happen. And somehow they kept surviving the apocalypse, even though they had absolutely nothing to add. And that may have been the reason why they survived, because the people who actually speak the truth and try to solve things are the first people to go from the people who don't want the truth to be spoken about. So,
I would totally agree with that. And she keeps falling back on this. We have to get past what's been done to What I didn't even know that
Marxist.
convoluted
It's
quote.
Marxist
And it, yeah,
ideology.
and it has a Marxist origin. So, yeah, interesting. So, while we're staying on the subject of Kamala, she did pick a running mate, and at the same time here, um, she is not, unbelievably to me, is not doing any interviews or press conferences. And everybody, and I've heard people online defending this. Well, she's using, non-traditional means, and meaning influencers, and she's just been in it 2 weeks. She just got the uh, I'm going to play a clip here. This is Trump talking about how Biden was pushed out. And here again, not saying pro Trump, but I am saying he's not wrong in what he says here. And then this is followed by a clip. Both of these clips today are from today. This is August 8th. We're live 8:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Both of these clips are from today. And this is Trump talking about Biden on a press conference he did today, where he, threw out some dates for a debate. And then it's followed in the same clip. We have Kamala answering the question as to when she's going to do an interview. And she says by the end of the month. Now, keep in mind, this is August 8th. She's been the presumed candidate now for several weeks. And by the end, you've been in media, you've been in marketing for how long is it for somebody like that to get an interview? Is about about 5 minutes. Yeah,
Immediate? Yeah, that usually means they have a grasp of the facts.
yeah.
This is all buffering to prevent people from finding out just how ignorant she is of the issues.
I guarantee you she's being trained. She's
Yeah,
being bombarded. And
yeah.
what they do is they just keep asking you the same questions over and over again, and you keep answering in the same way. So you have those answers pre-programmed in your mind, so to
She's
speak.
like a Pez dispenser.
Yes. Here we go. Here's the clips I'm referring to.
The presidency was taken away from Joe Biden, and I'm no Biden fan, but I'll tell you what, from a constitutional standpoint, from any standpoint you look at, they took the presidency away. And people were saying he lost after the debate. He couldn't win. Well, I don't know that that's true necessarily, but whether he could win or he couldn't win, he had the right to run. And they took it away. They said they're going to use the 25th Amendment. They're going to hit you hard. Either we can do it the nice. I know exactly, because I know a lot of people on the other side, believe it or not. And they said, we'll do it the nice way or we'll do it the hard way. And he said, all right.
Madam President, there's been a lot of questions about when you're going to sit down for your first interview since being the nominee. Do you have any update on that?
I've talked to my team. I want us to get an interview scheduled before the end of the month.
Okay, yeah, she's gonna, yeah, it's
Talk
so
to her
important.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna talk to her team, and it's so important that I do an interview that
It's almost insulting. It's like, let me talk
Yeah.
to my team instead of the American people.
Yeah, and we'll get it done by the end of the month, because boy, it takes a couple weeks to get
Anything to buy as much time between now and the election.
Yeah. So here again, there's no doubt in my mind she's being bombarded with training, to get those pat answers down. They're teaching her how to pivot when she gets asked a question that is going to reflect badly on her. She's being trained to answer in a way that sounds like an answer but really isn't, and deflect the subject. She's going through all that right now. And not that they don't all do that to a degree. I mean, any lawyer has probably prepped the witnesses and other things to be prepared for what you might get on the stand. That's not necessarily anything nefarious. But what is when you couple that with the fact that she doesn't stand for anything. And here again, this is something I've been very critical of with the Democratic Party. They totally lost a chance to cultivate a good candidate over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And their platform has been, we're not as bad as Trump.
Yeah.
And
while not addressing the serious issues that are actually causing America's middle class to absolutely collapse.
Absolutely. That is 100% correct. The world's on fire around them, and all they can talk about is how terrible Trump is.
Yeah. They're like,
And
but the fire over there is hotter.
Yes. So I just find that very, very odd that seems to be her platform when she's
Yeah,
on. When she's stumping.
Billy, I'm sorry. I have to
Go ahead.
say this because it bothers me so much. The fact that there's no public discourse going on from people in the Democratic Party about how this whole thing is unfolding is profoundly disturbing because it speaks to me of fear, censorship. Yeah, and fear. I just have to
Yeah.
say fear again because you would think that the way that whole thing unfolded, the way she's been stuffed down the Democratic Party's throats without a vote, you would think that that would be upsetting people. But the fact that they're not talking about it publicly either means that's not being shared. Because even if it's just a handful of people, where are they?
Yeah.
Why is the media not covering them? Why is no one talking about the fact that that Biden was railroaded out of office and Kamala was railroaded past an actual vote by anybody? It's profoundly disturbing to me. It speaks to, to me, it reminds me of like World War II when people's opinions were no longer necessary.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, the polling on this is very, very conclusive. Democrats do not give a shit about the fact that she was placed in there. It's a non-issue. It's as high as 80 or 90%. They actually, literally, do not give a shit that Biden was replaced in that manner. Now, with that being said, I don't know what that really says. Because the talking points leading up to that debate between Trump and Biden was, oh, he's fine. There's nothing wrong here. Everything's fine. No, 4 more years. Oh, yeah, 100%. And then the next thing you know, they're all on board with throwing him under the bus.
Yeah.
Okay.
It reminds me of the same mentality that was telling people that they were going to get fired from their jobs if they didn't take a jab of an experimental vaccine. Like that's
Yeah.
the same kind of hypnotized, brainwashed mentality that absolutely freaked me out during the closures because I couldn't believe that we weren't allowed to have conversation and just even like, oh, let's just have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what that same mentality is speaking to is that the people who engineered that whole thing, and I realize this is kind of like off script, but it actually is really serious because if no one in your party is allowed to question what's going on, then are you actually democratic at
Yes.
all?
Yes, and I'm not even sure it's a matter of being allowed. It's almost like the clapping seals will do anything they're told. Biden is fine. There's nothing wrong here. You have that Harry Sisson or whatever his name is. Oh, look at all the big crowd here for Biden, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. And then they're told, okay, well, we're going to go for Kamala now. And oh, Kamala. It's like that old saying, 50 million monkeys can't be wrong. It's one of those. It's one of those things. So, and not that I'm here again, I'm not saying Republicans don't have their faults, but the way this
Sure.
was just
Yeah.
changed out with a big cheering session, there's been plenty of evidence that she has been paying influencers or not
Oh, yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
to talk about how wonderful she is so she gets the younger vote.
I think this whole approach is actually gonna backfire on them. The inability for anyone in their party to show that they're actually going to speak up and have any kind of conversation about this is actually going to be their undoing.
Yeah. She has spoken at events that are tied to other events, to enhance the crowd size. And I just, the whole thing sounds very synthetic. And to me, what really makes it hollow is the fact that there is no message. There is no, here's what I'm going to do. Here's my message. Here's my Make America Great Again. And I'm saying this in terms of marketing. That's Trump's shtick. There's nothing here except Trump is bad.
It means there's no plan.
Yeah.
That's the whole problem with that. It's not even about them not being great marketers. It's the fact that they're not having a conversation about it shows they have absolutely no fucking plan in mind, which should scare the crap out of everybody because we're in dire straits.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about our vice presidential pick. I'm going to play this clip from CNN. CNN was actually, this commentator anyway, was actually very critical of Kamala and the vice presidential pick. Here we go.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know this guy. I mean, is it normal to let your biggest city in your state burn while you're the governor for 4 days, destroying thousands of businesses, hundreds of millions of dollars in property damage while you do nothing? Does that sound normal? Is it normal for your wife to say she opened the window so she could let the smell of tire fires waft in so they could take in the smells of this radical chaos and anarchy on the streets of Minneapolis? I don't view any of that as normal. I look at this through the lens of decision making. And in 2 cases, they've showed us who they are. Kamala Harris absolutely bowed down to the radical left in her party by not picking Shapiro, who is Jewish.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a couple of layers there. For one, there is the record of Tim Walz, which is very left. And if you're left leaning, that's fine. You're liberal, that's fine. The other layer to this is how she backed away from Shapiro, and this comes from the Palestinian effect that that they have put onto the Democratic Party.
yeah.
I believe they really did back away from him, and quite
Mhm.
frankly, I'm this is just my honest. If I was Jewish and living in New York, I know I've talked to several of them. I have a couple of friends and acquaintances there. They actually are very uneasy about going out now, and maybe it's paranoia, maybe this danger is being overblown. But it does speak to the climate that's in the country right now, and especially coming from the left.
Yeah.
I find it really, really odd that the party that touts all this stuff about inclusion and acceptance and tolerance and da 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 doesn't have any problem at all with what to me sounds a lot like anti-Semitism.
Yeah. Well,
And
they like chaos.
yeah,
See, they are, people talk a lot, and again, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but I can see them for what they are. The Republicans have plenty of issues, but I've not seen the Republicans wield chaos and fear quite like the Democrats, and they almost introduce extremism and chaos into situations so they can claim to be the level-headed one, and play, please whoever the biggest master is at the moment. I'm not surprised that they chose him because he looks like a Republican.
yeah,
Let's be honest. Like, one of
yes,
the
he
main
does.
reasons they chose him is because he looks like a Republican. They're trying to appeal and balance out the ticket, and they went with what they thought was a safer option over the one that they were whispering about a week ago, because he had even more scandal around him. But his record does not speak very highly of him or his ability to make decisions. It's that same. It's if you go back to even 20 years, the Democrats historically have capitalized on chaos.
Yeah,
Have used chaos as a way to claim to be the rational people, and it's done nothing but keep us distracted from actually solving anything. And now that's their go-to playbook:
yeah.
fear, chaos,
Uh,
fear, chaos.
I was listening to Kamala Harris at one of her stump rallies, and everything that she was saying that Trump was going to do, like he's
They
going to
done.
he's going to weaponize the justice system.
Oh,
Okay, check.
really?
He's going to try to censor you. Check.
Check.
They've
He's
done
gonna
it.
use social media to control what you can think and say. Check.
Check. Yeah. And Tim Walz, from all that I can gather, obviously he's new. I'm not real familiar with him. He's from Minnesota, the Minnesota governor. So I'm still doing some checking on him, but everything that I've run across so far says he's, talk about balancing the ticket. I mean, he's weighing it down as far left as you can get.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, this Trump is bad. Trump is bad. They're counting on the anti-Trump vote, and I don't doubt there's a lot of anti-Trumpness out there. So that's their strategy, because they really don't have a whole lot of time to craft a message. They really don't have a whole lot of time to create a platform. So they're just going for the obvious, which is
Yeah.
talk about how horrible Trump is going to be. That's I've always said comparison branding is not a good idea. I don't like it, but
They have
you
no
know that
vision, and,
yeah,
but based on my engagement with social media, a lot of the people who are traditionally Democrats, a lot of the content, and my algorithms are very mixed. They're not bent because because I'm independent. A lot of African Americans, a lot of people who are saying I've always voted Democrat, are pointing this that they feel like they're being manipulated, and
mhm,
that they're gonna vote for Trump for the first time because I think the rhetoric around Trump is actually not working in the Democrats' favor, and they're just gonna keep beating that same drum, and it's gonna be their death now.
yeah. We're getting a fair amount of comments today, and just to let you know, we'll do our best to at the conclusion of the program to go back and address some of them. So I want to let you know that we are acknowledging that. Let me just say this about Tim Walz. Tim Walz served in the Army National Guard for 24 years before retiring in 2005, and this is where I'm actually going to defend him a little bit. Now, I don't know all the details on this. Something could come out that radically changes my view on this. Some people have been critical of him retiring prior to a deployment to Iraq. Now, some of the veterans involved, some of the people that know him say he abandoned his men. Uh, other people have said that going out there and talking about your record is stolen valor. I wouldn't go that far. Let me qualify two things. The term stolen valor originally applied to people who never served in the military, but they put on a military uniform and they presented themselves as a veteran to get some sort of veteran benefits, whether it be even just the acknowledgement of, hey, thank you very much for your service. Or sometimes they present themselves as a homeless veteran so that they can get donations and handouts and so forth. That's usually where the term comes from, stolen valor. I mean,
Mhm.
speaking of the valor and the admiration that we have for our service people and taking some of that. I don't know that I would apply it to somebody who was 24 years in. I mean, that's some, the whole Swift boat thing is a good example of tarnishing somebody's military record. Dan Quayle, very unfairly treated for his service in the
Yeah,
Navy.
I remember that really well.
And when you take somebody's service and you try to blemish it, I just have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
Now, here again, getting into the details of this, if he abandoned his men, people that expected him to go along with the deployment, that's another thing. I've also heard that he had signed some sort of a contract for training and for the title that he had, which committed him to another 2 years, which he backed out on. Now, I don't know how true that is or what the details are of that. That's a little different. I mean, that's worth criticism. But to say something to somebody who spent 24 years in the thing, and let's say a deployment came up, and he said, "Okay, I've got my 4 years in. I think I've had enough." I don't necessarily. Oh my God, he's terrible. I don't necessarily feel that. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that because he's recently been announced, they're going to really go after him. I think all of that about his military record, because it can be bent either way. Like I base my opinion less on something that happened years ago and more on recent records, and basically letting your your state burn is not a
Mhm.
good sign. And at the end of the day, he was clearly chosen for what he looks like, and
Mhm.
less about what he's actually done, because he's not that marketing friendly, let's be honest. It's just that he looks like a Republican, and I see a lot of people commenting about Kamala, and I just have to say, I don't base my opinions on a political position. I base them on evidence, and I have looked into what has happened over the last 4 years, and it is literally breathtaking what has
Yeah.
happened to the United States of America in the last 4 years. The American dream, which was already on its knees, is dead. And anybody who cannot see that the American dream is dead and has been stomped on all over by corporate interests and greed that have controlled our politicians for years now, and that's Republican and Democrats, is delusional about what is actually happening. And I'm not trying to be mean. I really am not. I try to be
Yeah.
super independent and fair, but people need to wake up. America is literally on its knees, and if we do not do something pretty severe over the next 4 years, we will never recover the dominance that we had post World War II. That is facts. And I'm speaking
Oh,
as a
yeah.
as a futurist. Facts. If we do not do something pretty drastic to deal with what's going on with the economy, which is absolutely dreadful after the last 4 years, especially after the last 2 years when they have increased food 25 to 50% and rents of apartments 25 to 50%, even worse in some cities. Wake up, people. If you're not living in those circumstances, you cannot judge them. If you are not a younger person who is facing the lack of jobs, the lack of benefits, the lack of security, the insane rents, the drop in actual pay, then you don't actually know what is going on. And I would suggest that you actually go look that up and stop listening to the Democratic BS that's going on, because the country's in serious straits.
Yes, it is. We have to give some attention to RFK Jr.
Mhm.
Again, you and I did a space on X on Monday. We had a lot of RFK supporters in that in that space. We talked about the demise of broadcast journalism over the past 50 years or so. It was a great space for those of you who listened in and who listened to the playback. Thank you so much. We had a great group of people in there, and they were wonderful people. A lot of them were RFK Jr. supporters. We ended up talking about RFK quite a bit. That discussion, by the way, has been turned into a podcast. We edit it. We make it sound a little better sonically. We do some things, and that is available on the playlist if you go to the Billy D's podcast. That discussion, about what happened to broadcast journalism. How did we get here? That episode is available if you'd like to listen to that. There's a great panel on that topic. With that being said, the RFK Jr. supporters are really upset about the fact that he has not been included in the debates. One of the reasons that Trump did speak today was he offered up some dates, and apparently Kamala has accepted them. They're going to be on various networks, and some of the details, audience, no audience, that type of thing, have to be worked out yet. But those debates are seemingly going to move forward. With that being said, I do believe that RFK Jr. at this point should have a voice.
Yes.
Your opinion on that?
Absolutely. I actually, I think if anyone and I'm sorry to keep addressing the Democratic people who are Democratic, but it's because I'm actually quite speechless of their inability to see some pretty obvious weirdness that's been going on. The fact that he has been chased out of the Democratic Party, chased out of debates, is quite shocking. And you would think a country that calls itself free would embrace the idea of having an alternative candidate, even if it's just because we as America love to talk about freedom of speech and all that jazz. You would think that they would actually embrace having a third candidate up there, if anything, to be a buffer between these two most obvious candidates. He's an intelligent man. Whether you like some of the decisions he's made in the past or not isn't even the point. He has a huge support within the country, and those supporters deserve to have their candidate be heard.
Yeah. The bear story. Very briefly, unless you've been living under a rock, I won't belabor all the details. A story broke about RFK planting a dead bear in a park in New York. He gave some kind of a post with Roseanne Barr where he explained that the bear was apparently hit by a vehicle and killed. He had put it in his van to skin it and process it for bear meat and for the fur and so on. But something happened. He couldn't do that. So he decided it would be funny to put the bear in a park with a bicycle as if the bicycle had hit the bear. And he kind of chuckled about it. And the next day, the pictures came out with him posing with the bear. And the bear was busted up. It was ghoulish. I didn't like it. The fact of the matter is he's 70 something. This happened 10 years ago, which means even then he was older than I am now. So this is not, on the surface, when you hear a story about this, frat boys, that's something a bunch of drunken frat boys would do. Okay. Like them posing with homeless people, like they, shot the homeless person. Have you ever seen those where they're kneeling down with a rifle? And
Yeah. I'm from
okay,
Tennessee.
very bad taste. But that's the type of thing that you expect from frat boys. Me, I would expect better.
But can I ask you? I mean, how
Yes.
much is it? How different is it than Trump's payoffs and Kamala's interesting history in San Francisco that speaks
Yes.
to interesting history? Let's just
Yeah.
call it that.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
really, aren't we just talking about what we can spin the most shocking? They've all had crap in their history.
Yeah.
And I don't even care if it's 10 years ago or 30 years ago. I'm sorry, but some of the behavior that I've heard about is, pretty shocking from,
Yeah.
political
And
candidate standpoint.
and we're going to get into that into the weeks to come. I know that there's people making positive comments about Kamala, but boy, I'll tell you what, if you look at her history and some of the goofball decisions she was involved in as a district attorney, there's nothing funny about it. And I'll tell you this. I've been saying this for a long time. We talk about the jury system and how juries can be manipulated and all these other kind of things. I've been saying this for a long time now. I'm one of the few people that I've heard say this. The weakest part of our judicial system is the discretion that district attorneys have determining who they are going to prosecute and who they will not. There is, like quoting her, at the stroke of a pen, I can make an accusation. I
Yeah.
can make a charge. I can put a misdemeanor on somebody, get them hustling with their uh, their legal staff, get them to spend money, do whatever, and then the next thing you know, I'll drop the charges anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
she was speaking about the power. She wasn't saying that she did that recreationally, but when she was speaking about that, she was talking about the power that DAs have, and she was not wrong. There's nothing that governs that. There's nothing that oversees it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if she had any other reason for becoming a DA,
Yeah.
which is what that says to me, because she says so little that I find of value. And I know that's upsetting to people, but I pay very close attention to what people say and do, not what they claim. And people make a lot of claims about Biden, Harris, and what they've been able to do, but I've actually looked at the data, the data, not the data being put out by the White House,
Yeah.
but the actual economic data and what has actually been going on in this country. And it does not speak to a good 4 years. It speaks to corporate greed run amok.
Yeah. And you can look up that clip. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. I might have some of the
Mhm.
exact quotes out of, and I don't want to do that, but
Honestly, does it really
essentially,
matter? Because her quotes always sound like the same thing
yeah,
said 3 different ways anyway.
essentially what she was talking about was the power of a district attorney. And like I said, that
Mhm.
is the weakest part of our judicial system. I mean, depending on what charges are brought, a district attorney can decide to go after somebody for spitting on the
Yeah, isn't
sidewalk.
isn't that how
Uh,
Jeffrey Epstein got away with,
Yep.
committing more crimes? Because DAs
Yep.
are actually given too much oversight about what they choose to
Absolutely.
do?
Yeah, they can decide whether or not they want to prosecute somebody for illegally spitting on the sidewalk, or they can look away from a murder.
Yeah.
I mean, it is that extreme. So, with that being said, great little show tonight. There's a lot coming
Yeah.
up in the coming weeks. Here again, we will do a next space again. Next Monday, here again, this is August 8th. This coming Monday, there is talk of Elon and Trump doing a space, but there's been no time given, and I don't know if there's been a firm confirmation of that. There's talk about it. Whether it happens or not is anybody's guess. We're planning on maybe doing every other week, so that would bring the following week, which I don't have a calendar in front of me, but the following Monday, I believe, is August 19th. And Shaman and I might very well do another space at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Follow us on Twitter. You can follow Cynthia at Shaman Isis. Shaman, what else do you have going on?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I am doing an event at New House, Madison Square in New York City on August 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. Cocktails and conversation. I'm sitting down to talk about the death of the American dream, which is the heart and soul of the country, and how we can actually reignite it through artificial intelligence. So if you are interested in going to that event, please check my website. And as I'm doing the trial runs for my one woman show starting in September, on September 8th. That's the day after my book comes out. So I do love to stack my my to-do list.
I guess so. Well,
Right.
that's fantastic, though. Here at the Billy D's podcast, as I mentioned, we have that space in podcast form. It's in the playlist. You can find the Billy D's podcast on every single podcast platform that I am aware of. There might be some obscure one that I don't know about, but all the major podcast platforms are covered. We are on all of them. Another episode worth checking out is I talked to an attorney about some common sense things to do. It's not legal advice, as we always say, but about some common sense things to do immediately after you have an accident. That's a great episode as well. Coming up, I have an author talking about some of the history of collegiate sports. And I have a political analyst coming on. She's been on the program before. We're going to be breaking down some political things, and especially some of the things that the pundits have been saying. She's going to break some of that down. So a lot of great stuff coming up. Do watch out for that space coming up in almost 2 weeks. It's a little less than 2 weeks. But fantastic space again. Thank you for everyone who participated. Cynthia, you got a lot going on. Thank you so much for co-hosting again, as always.
Of course, it's always a pleasure.
And we will be talking to you again very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X @BillyDees for updates about the program.